All right, welcome into the last Wednesday in February of 2025. We're going to kick things off, talk a little Michigan, as always, here on Rivals.com, the Maize and Blue Review. As the snow, sleet falls around Washtenaw County, we come live at you every 2 o'clock on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Mondays as well. But we're ready to go and get into a couple different things with Michigan. The basketball team ready for a big game for them. They only got a handful of games left in the regular season as we are getting ready to turn the calendar towards March, and everybody knows what that means. Got a word or two on Detroit sports. And then the G should be up here, recruiting. That's where we're going to start talking about Michigan recruiting. It wasn't long ago that you had Sean McGee, Michigan's general manager, on the Michigan Home Pod talking about how he goes about targeting players and everything that goes into it. And he reminded everyone of a couple dates to keep in mind. And one is the revenue sharing date, April the 7th. There's a settlement date. What's expected to happen there is that you're going to get an announcement that universities have to share $22 million with their players annually, directly, not a collective, but directly handing the money to athletes, which is going to be different. And there's a lot of confusion. I was just looking at a story over the last day or two where somebody, I didn't know who he was, but he was thinking that, well, Michigan, there was a report that Michigan had paid, $12 million to Bryce Underwood. And this writer thought, well, I'm going to subtract, 12 from 22, and Michigan, they're not going to have any money to pay anybody else. And, they're going to be hamstrung with their cap. And I'm sure some people read that and were like, whoa, Michigan, what's this mean? And it's all a situation where anybody talks about it with authority. You say, I don't know, maybe you know exactly what you're talking about. Maybe you don't. But there's no cap when it comes down to paying players. And they don't even know how they're going to take that $22 million and distribute it. That's why we're waiting for April the 7th. Maybe they'll come down and say, we do know that before the election, there was the rule that it had to be split equally, Title IX, between men's and women's. But once the new administration came in, that was one of the things that they tore up. So no, you don't have to do that. Although, if you're thinking about Michigan and how they go about things, I would guess that they are going to be Title IX compliant when it comes down to $22 million. You might not like that, and a lot of people don't. Most alums of Michigan understand and they want a healthy, vibrant Olympic sports, which includes the women's side. And so people understand that. Most people, a lot of people, I don't know, most people, a lot of people, maybe it is most people, they just want football to be great. They don't really care about anything else. Sure, basketball, sure, anything else, but football. And football generates all the money. Let's give everything to football, which is a perfectly understandable point of view from a Michigan football fan. Like, we just want Michigan football to be good. Who cares about anything else? I say all of that because to me, there was the idea before this gets settled, April the 7th, that with it being no cap right now and you have your collective, I recently saw, was it from Ward Manual or was it just from the Michigan football site? I think it was from maybe both, where there was an indication from Michigan like, hey, the collective's still rolling. Michigan is still, looking for your donations. They're still wanting to, bring money in from the fans to hand out to the players. And I felt like this, and I have felt like this, that before you get, we don't know what collective bargaining, if that's going to, we know that they want it to happen. The Big Ten does. They're trying to take the front and lead on that. But we don't know if they're going to get that done before April the 7th or before July. And we don't know what they're going to say about that revenue sharing. So until that, when people say it's a Wild West, you can, it's free spending, it's free agency, and there's no cap. And I think Michigan, since they're in a situation where they've got everything across the board with school and football and stadium, and now they've got a bag that they can drop at anyone, they're in a great position of saying, why not spend a lot now before any of this gets settled, where they say, no, you can't spend all of this like next year. I would doubt, you could be a lawyer or somebody that is more attuned to all of this and say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. But my thing is that, let's say Michigan, spends, 10, 15, $20 million here before any agreement comes out, and the agreement comes out, they can't have some agreement and say, oh, well, you spent this money, you've got to include this. Now you got to cut some guys. They can't do that. They got to make it from, to the future. They can't go back and retroactively when you've already, it's got to be for 2027. If they're going to go about that. That's what I would think. That seems reasonable and logical and timely to me. But of course, this is just me sitting around thinking about it. I could be missing, the boat on it completely. But we get to all that just to have you remember again the date, April the 7th, where that's where they're talking about getting this $22 million settled. Now, it wasn't long ago that the number one player, according to Rivals and many, he's right up there with any service that you might look at, is this offensive lineman out of Missouri, Jackson Cantwell. And he set up an official visit to Michigan. So Michigan's got him coming in the middle of June, the weekend of June 13th. There was a quote over the weekend that I saw from him saying that so far the coaches, he likes Dan Lanning, he said. And I don't know if he's met Sharon Moore, but, Oregon also has that last visit lined up. So it looks like Oregon is the leader and Oregon's the team to beat, and he likes Dan Lanning and all of that. And we know Oregon is flush with money. So if Michigan is going to get somebody like Cantwell, they're not going to be able to. You got the top player in the country. You got Oregon and Ohio State and Georgia and everybody involved. You're going to have to pay a pretty penny. And there was a thought, which I thought myself was a good one, with Michigan doing so well this year in their tackles, with getting Babaloa, and then they got the kid from Texas, that you could make a case, and then Gatch, maybe he'll play tackle as well, that if Michigan is looking at themselves of having $20 or $30 million to spend, I don't know what it is, that maybe they, instead of going big on a quarterback and or offensive lineman, it would be better going big for a running back or a defensive end or a linebacker, that kind of thing. That also makes sense to me. However, if you go back to what I just talked about, and it's like, now's the time to splurge and go, big on everyone before they actually put some cap in place, where then you're going to have to really, dole out the positional money and all of that. Why not, make a run at everyone? Now, you could also think that if the top player in the country wants to take an official visit, and sure enough, Oregon, you get them into Michigan, and you wine and dine them, so to speak. That's not a very good thing for to say to a recruit. You just give them an official visit, show them the campus and everything, and you never know. A guy could get a guy could be impressed. You never know. You connect. You're not going to turn away the best player in the country, and you might want to make a nice, reasonable offer to him. So I don't think that you just no, we don't want you. No, so. And that's the same thing with the big-time quarterback. One of these five-stars, you say, wow, do you really want a five-star quarterback coming in at the 2026 class when you got Bryce Underwood? Would you want to, if you were going to be a senior in high school, would you want to go to a place where Bryce Underwood was going to be a sophomore starting at Michigan? You would think no, but that's, again, I think gets back to the point where why not and where it's at right now, why not go for it with everything? And I think there's a chance, like this could all change tomorrow, the how Michigan is approaching it and how all teams are going to have to approach it. But right now, with it being complete free agency and no cap, why not make a run at everyone? And if you're going to spend, and you are, Michigan is, we've seen that, why not just go all in right now before they put a rule down saying, and Michigan is one, when it's come to paying players, they have appeared to really adhere and follow those rules to a T, or other teams haven't. Now, Michigan hasn't been perfect across the board, obviously. We know that, but they have, it appears, followed the rules when it's come down to paying money. And I saw just before I came on some good news as it applies to the running back out of Texas, Forney, Texas, Javian Osborne, one of the national Rivals guys. I don't know if he's a national. I shouldn't say that. He works for Rivals.com. He put in a prediction for Osborne to Michigan, which was a nice thing to see. I mean, here's one of the top 5 backs in the country, and he's getting a prediction to go to U of M. That's not nothing. Now, if it's somebody that is in this business and is trying to get something right, I don't know, some guys maybe just throw out rando predictions or something, but here's a prediction for Michigan. So to me, that I thought that was some good news. And it gets back to, if Michigan is going, and I think they're going all out when it comes to recruiting players. There's no, even though McGee on that podcast said there's not an unlimited supply of money. Well, nobody really has an unlimited supply of money, but Michigan right now, and I don't know how involved Jolin is. Remember that surprise that came up? When it comes to the top 5 teams in the country, I think that Michigan, I have the feeling that they are going to pay as much as any of the top 5 teams. They are one of the top 5 teams. They will pay as much as any of those teams when it comes to NIL. They will drop top 5 bag money and compete with anybody in the country. It's weird saying it. It's probably weird hearing it, but I think it's true. So, yeah, Osborne and then Heiter as well. This 1-2 combination, this dream of having a backfield of 2 top 5 running backs, and knowing that Michigan is smash university, and knowing that Michigan wants to run the ball, and you're Heiter and you're Osborne, and you're in the backyard of the Detroit Lions, who have a great, the best 1-2 combination of running backs, whatever, Knuckles and I always forget the other guy's name, Speedster. That's not it, but you get the point. Maybe these 2 guys are thinking they could be the Thunder and Lightning, or Thunder and Thunder, or Knuckles and Knuckles coming in for Michigan. And there's Heiter. He's got his visit. Ooh, it's the same weekend as Cantwell. Can we get Jolyn Ellison to come in? What's she doing in the middle of June? Jolyn, come on in. I don't know how it would work, but Jolyn comes in. She likes tennis. I know when I drive down State Street and I look over, there's before you get down to where the football and Yost Ice Arena is, it looks like a soccer stadium over there. And then I can see the tennis. I've never been over there to watch tennis, but I think Jolyn likes tennis. Maybe there's something they can do to bring her over and watch some tennis. I parked over there one time and then had a golf cart take me down through this tailgate that I was going to over on one of the holes. And you forget about the Michigan athletic campus, just how expansive it is. You cross the railroad tracks and say, oh, there's field hockey, it's right there. Oh, there's the Glick Field. Oh, there's ice, Yost Ice Arena, and all these different things. But it's really it's almost going back to Briarwood right now. So yeah, you've got. I'm looking forward to this June 13th recruiting weekend, and I think Michigan literally may have to get bags of money, fill them up, and everybody's going to go crazy. Now, can they? If you make an offer now, and then you have April the 7th comes, and there's a rule that there could be something different there, but. You have to play this by ear, make a best guess, and you got to have contingency plans all the way through and how this is going to work. But right now, like Michigan's going after the biggest, the best, and the brightest, and there does not appear to be any sort of barrier where in years past we would talk about it, say, you really got to worry about Oregon. I mean, come on, Phil Knight, he's going to come in there. Okay, Phil Knight. What are other teams saying? Well, Ellison, he's going to be there. What are we going to do? Well, you can't compete with that guy. Right. No, you can't. You really can't compete with him. And so it doesn't feel like, why would Jolyn just get involved one time for the QB? And she's getting so much fanfare about it. I mean, she's going to jump in on this class too. It's just me talking, just me working through all of the recruiting and everything that's going on. Michigan has 2 players committed right now towards next year. A wide receiver from Texas, Jalen Pyle. He's a 4-star, and so is this defensive back from Florida, Brody Jennings. Now, Jennings said recently that he's going to take a bunch of, he didn't say a bunch of visits, but he is taking a bunch of visits. So, it's a long way to go before the finish line. Anybody that commits and then takes visits, they don't really feel like, to me, commitments, but nobody's a commitment really until, you're getting down there. Guys could just move. They could be all in. They could, sign, and the next day they could be like, boom, out. It can happen just like that. We have seen it. So, what else do I have on the recruiting front? Oh, somebody last show or last week was asking about Jake Kruel out of Florida. It was the IMG and Michigan's interest. Michigan is interested in this defensive end. I think every team in the country is. I believe Michigan has a visit set up with this kid. From what I was doing, this was just my own work on him. It appeared to me he is a Florida kid that is going to IMG, that is going to be tough to beat the Gators, from what I saw when it comes down to that. Let's look at some of the feedback and what people are talking about. Mr. Martini making the cheeseburger joke. Yeah. That's that's a funny one, the old cheeseburger joke. I just saw Jim Harbaugh today. He was at the combine in Indy. He was sitting down and talking with Pat McAfee. I liked it. It was pretty good. Here's cut from a different cloth. He's talking about it being simple. If you want the top players, you have to pay for them or they'll go to a program that will. There's no getting around it. I think we're all in agreement on that. You have to come up with the number for the player, and will it be good enough? The one thing that McGee said in his interview with John Jansen, and he was like, John, you know how free agency works in the NFL. The player always goes to the highest bidder. And he said, it's not like that in college. And I was going to be like, it kind of is, Sean. I mean, it's always been like that. But Michigan, the thing is, I don't want to make it sound like Michigan doesn't have other things to offer. Michigan has everything to offer. And so, offering things scholastically and, just the alumni base. I mean, they have a great sales pitch and all of that. But I think I would have, and I think McGee knows that too. There's a little bit of PR. Like, it's a special place. Yeah, it is a special place. Everybody's selling that it's a special place. Their place is special, that they can get you to the NFL, that they can develop you. How much can everybody say about their school? Everybody's got their sales pitch about it. I don't even know how much guys are listening to school about school, but if you're only if you're a fan of your team, you tend to think that your culture, your everything, is better than everyone else's. I go back to that Harbaugh interview that I was watching on McAfee, and I didn't watch all of it. It was just, it was on the screen, and I was reading the subtitles, but it was Harbaugh, so I was watching it a little bit, and they were talking about the culture. Oh, well, you got to be a Harbaugh guy. You got to love football. And, Harbaugh was saying, oh, I know, when they match the energy and they come in, who loves football and all of that. I'm thinking of all the other teams in the NFL. I know the Lions. They're like, we have a culture. The Chargers have a culture. Seemingly everybody, has a culture, except the Browns. I don't know. The Browns have a culture. They're the one that don't. But, some are better than the others. But it's like, it was like the Miami Heat a couple of years ago. Spoelstra's a great coach. And, they always said they even had it on their shirts. And they might even put it on their floor. Miami culture. Jimmy Butler's like, Miami's culture. Oh, this culture. Miami culture. But I think this is right. You have to make a competitive offer. Cantwell is the example. Michigan might have different, they are going to be different, just like whatever from Rivals or what anybody else says. They're going to have their own rankings. But Cantwell is going to be pretty damn high. And he is going to, it's not like they're going to say, let's just offer him 50,000 and, and talk about what a great place Michigan is. That's wasting his time. More like a competitive offer is going to be, they're going to have to say probably something like $4 or $5 million. Now they might, with an offensive lineman, try to spoon feed that and say, yeah, you can get 500,000, and then it goes up every year. You get a little bit more and a little bit more, and they have to structure it. They have to make it where it's going to be competitive, and it's going to be, something to at least make the guy feel like, you have a shot. And then you never know. Maybe Oregon's like, we'll just give you $4 million straight up front. And then, you know what? If I was Cantwell and Michigan was offering me $4 million, but just 500,000 for my freshman year, and then it kind of went up after that. If Oregon was offering me $4 million up front, I would take the Oregon money. And then I would transfer somewhere else afterwards if I wanted to go. And if I already got my $4 million in the pocket, that's the kind of thing. Mr. Martini's talking about give Alford a big raise if they land the 2 top 5 running backs. Yeah, I know what you're saying there. For sure. Yeah, that's all right. It happens. We know you're good, Mr. Martini. We know you're uh, rolling true. Kenneth is asking everybody in the chat. He's planning on going to the spring game. Do you pay for tickets? Every year, there's never been a charge to get into the spring game. There has been a few times where they've had a charity and they've asked, hey, if you want to donate, $5-10 to the charity, but you don't have to do that. So no, it's free. It's free to get in. Mr. Martini is on it. I was at last year's. It was free. You say that, and then you think in the world of the NIL, maybe you say you set up an NIL booth. And you say all money goes to Michigan football recruiting. If there was a bucket, if I was walking in the big house on, what are we talking about? April the 19th. That's when the spring game is. If I was walking in there and they had these buckets and it said contributions go to Michigan football recruiting, I got to think that going to be some people dropping some money in those buckets. Now, could they put in a one-time charge where you had to give money to get in? They could, but I don't think they will. But, it's always, when something's free all the time and then you try to charge people get really upset. $5 is worth $10. I don't know. Hell, I would probably pay 20, but I'm not asking Michigan to start charging $20 in the spring game. But when something's free all the time and then you try charging people freak out. I don't know if you realize that. It's like all of these years that they had online where you could get the newspaper, like the Free Press and the Detroit News. It was always free. And then I don't know how many years ago, 5-10 years ago, maybe longer than that even, they started to charge a subscription. Everybody's like, that's BS. Like, it's not really BS. It was free before. And you pay for Netflix. But if Netflix was free right off the bat, then you just start paying for it, you wouldn't like that. Right, Daniel? Who's got the old English D. And we're going to talk about Detroit sports coming up in just a minute. All that recruiting, I want to tell you, this is the perfect time to tell you that you want to know about these visitors. You want to know about Michigan's chances. You want to know about what's going on with the NIL, who U of M is targeting, all of that. You find out, and then you include basketball in there as well. You find out by going to the Maize and Blue Review and joining up for a month, for a year. If you're a Michigan fan, this is the place to be. You join the Maize and Blue Review by going to michigan.rivals.com. We'll see you over there. Looking forward to it. Now, Michigan Hoops, they've got 3 games in a row at home. Just 4 games remaining in the regular season. They've got Rutgers coming up. People have a hard time when you lose to, in this case, your biggest rival in basketball, Michigan State. There's going to be a swing of emotion where people are just going to be a little bit more down than they probably should be. And it was predictable, and I saw it when Michigan lost at home the way they did, getting smacked around by Michigan State. And it's like, people like, there was an interesting, I thought, post on the Den, which is the posting board of the community over at the Maize and Blue Review. And one gentleman was like, he was finding it stressful that Michigan was in it to win a conference title. He said he thought he would enjoy it more if they were just fighting with this motley crew to get into the tournament. There were a lot of people like, yeah. And I was thinking, wait, you'd rather have this team not a lock to make the tournament, which they are right now. You'd rather have them fighting so they could just get into the tournament? I don't know, last team, where one of those play-in games, and everybody's like, no, it's actually not a play-in game. You're already in. Hogwash, for that. And I should say that, the Nebraska, it was after the Nebraska game, not the Michigan State game, but it was kind of the continuation of that because they really looked bad against Nebraska. Whether you wanted to insert that it happens sometimes, even if you're a good team, you play, you look pathetic. You look like you couldn't throw the ball in the ocean. You look like you shouldn't even be out on the floor against anyone, let alone a top 25 team moving ahead. Talking about winning anything sounds like a joke. And, that again, you understand and understood the feeling about how people were reacting after Monday night's game. But there's an up arrow. This is how I look at it. There's an up arrow for Michigan basketball. For Michigan football, ever since Bryce Underwood flipped from, there was 2 weeks, Michigan had a bye week. It was the low point of the season was when they lost to Indiana. That was on the 9th of November. And then Underwood committed to flip to Michigan. Underwood went to the Northwestern game. Michigan scored 50 points. Underwood was on the, if I saw 50 pictures of them, all of them were awesome. But, Michigan, the one put up 50 and 50 piece. And it was like, wow, hey, maybe Bryce Underwood. And then they, as we all know, but we don't get tired of saying or talking about, they beat Ohio State on the road at OSU without having Ohio State score in the second half, without Ohio State, the eventual national champs, having their superstar wide receiver have more than 36 yards. I mean, it was unbelievable. Ohio State being held under 100 yards rushing, while Michigan put up damn near 200. It's incredible, as we all know. 13-10, Michigan with the win. And then even after all that, when you saw all of the the exodus to the pros and no opt-outs for the ReliaQuest Bowl, then Michigan went out there, and then Alabama like bringing their full team, like, yeah, Jalen Milroe, hey, maybe he could be the number 1 pick. And then Michigan, gets him off the field on the 4th down, first series. The rain is in there, maybe on that first series. Milroe fumbles on the next series. Milroe throws a pick on the 3rd series. Milroe fumbles again on the 4th one. I don't know. It was all like Bryce Underwood. My point there from Michigan is that it was a very down, the lowest point in a long time since, I don't know, certainly they had to go back probably to the Hoke era, maybe headset. That was the Hoke era. Was that Indiana game? But things have looked up. The trajectory, with a full arrow up with football. Basketball, the most important thing, it's the same thing as football. The most important thing for a school, if you're a Power 5 program, is going to be the head coach. I mean, look at St. John's. You get a coach, Rick Pitino, what he's got going with the Johnnies. Dusty May looks like he's real. He looks like he's a real one. And to get that, it reminds me, I don't know if he's going to be like John Beilein. I know he respects John Beilein. And, John Beilein likes Dusty May. But John Beilein came in and, I had forgotten, because it was all those, de facto probation years, just how enjoyable Michigan basketball could be. Vying for the conference title, the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament. Wow, Michigan, John Beilein. And then John Beilein didn't abruptly leave, but he left like, whoa. Now it's done. It's back to the Ed Martin years, back to the Brian Ellerby years. I felt that last year, which was the worst. Again, the lowest point in my lifetime of watching U of M, even with the Ellerby years. What happened last year? No hope, seemingly. And then, Dusty has got a huge up arrow for Michigan basketball. You don't often get free rolls where there's just no pressure on you. It's never been like that for football. It feels like every game is just a meat grinder. Your life is on the line. There's going to be full on despair if U of M even just only wins by, single digit points. Don't even talk about losing a game because it's over then. It's always like that for Michigan football. It's not like that for basketball. You've got the first year head coach, and the bar was if he could make the tournament, it would be a successful season. That was my bar. You might have had a different one. I don't know how I would be talking if Michigan was only had 12 wins right now. None of the guys looked like they were any good, and there wasn't any hope. It would be like, this is a very disappointing season, but it's year one. But it's not that way. It's kind of a free roll. They're in this thing, and they're even better than a lot of times I put down stranger things can happen. That usually just means that, it's a 1 in a million type shot. And which I thought with Bryce Underwood, hey, anything can happen. I didn't think he was going to flip to Michigan, then he did. But Michigan basketball has a better than anything can happen shot, even with the conference title, even with making a run in the NCAA tournament. I'm not predicting that they go to the Final Four. I don't even know if I'm ready to predict that they win a game. But being on Selection Sunday and having your name roll through there, it's important. And Michigan's going to have that. And let's see if they'll be able to validate it and, move through, get to the first weekend, those kind of things. Even though, I say it's a free roll, don't hold me to that if there's a first game one and done for Dusty and that. All right, let's take some questions here before I give you my thoughts on Detroit sports. And Ferris has got a run of posts I see there. He's asking about Michigan State at Maryland. Who you got? Are we all going to watch that? Absolutely. I think, fear the turtle. Go Maryland. 6:30, Big Ten Network. I got news for you. I'll be watching that game. Here's Maryland. This is the most likely game out of what Michigan State has remaining that they will lose. They've got Maryland, and then their other 3 games, they've got Wisconsin. Whatever you feel about them, but that's in the Breslin Center. They go to Iowa. Sure, it's on the road. They could lose that. And then, of course, Michigan. So, yeah, this is the one. So, yeah, Maryland at home. What's the line in that game? Ooh, Maryland minus 4.5. It's a big number. Ooh. Ferris is saying he's hoping that Michigan can be 1 game up on MSU going into the game at East Lansing. Then I can accept losing to them and sharing the title. Well, talk about a house money type situation. That would mean likely that Michigan wins out going into that game, and then Michigan State will drop this game tonight. Going in where you already got a piece of the title in your back pocket sounds very ideal. It's kind of like your girlfriend. You're having a moment with her, and she says, if you ever asked me to marry you, I would say yes. 100% unequivocally yes. And so then you prepare everything, and, you've got your ring, and then you think, wow. And somebody says, well, what if she says no? And you're like, she already said she's going to say yes. You feel pretty good about your situation. Good analogy? I don't know. It's the one that came to mind. CFADC is talking about Cantwell being the number 1 tackle in the country, and he declares Michigan will get him. They need to protect the number one quarterback and player in the country in Bryce Underwood. Keep him protected and upright and make holes for the running backs. Well, you cut from a different cloth, putting his projection in for Cantwell. If you had to ask me, and like I said, this isn't anything official. This is not an official forecast from me. Oregon's got the last visit, and I was just reading a quote where he said how much he liked Dan Lanning. Those two parts right there, make me think Oregon. But they are getting a visit from him, and they can compete bag-wise with Oregon now. So maybe June 13th is just like one of those beautiful June days in Ann Arbor, and then he'll go out to Eugene, and it'll rain all 3 days when he's out there, and he'll be like, this kind of sucks. But, yeah, I think holding out hope for the number one player in the country doesn't sound bad to me. Ferris talking about the concert for the first time being at the Big House. Will that continue? How many bonus revenues will that get us? Yeah, I don't know if that money is going to be turned around. Good luck in getting your hand in there. I don't think it's all going to football. You got a stadium that can hold over 100,000. You wonder why they haven't done it. What else is going on? They play field hockey there sometimes. I've seen some of the lines out on the field, maybe for the spring game, some soccer, maybe. I don't know. They go over there, but not a whole lot. I know they have their, if it's nice enough where everybody walks and everything when you graduate, but it just sits over there and not doing a whole lot. It's a good idea. Okay, and let's see. Ferris breaking it down. Mr. Martini asking my thoughts on Biff Poggi and Eric Campbell joining the football staff. Well, Biff Poggi was thought of as Michigan's consigliere to Jim Harbaugh. I can recall that story that was written about him. Nobody is more enthusiastic and more of a Michigan fan who left Michigan for Charlotte to be a head coach than Biff Poggi. He's never said, he just always talks about Michigan in the highest regard. He's got great East Coast connections. It's a home run having Biff Poggi back. I'm a little biased about Eric Campbell. He was in Ann Arbor when I was working there for 11 years. We played basketball together, probably 10 years. For a decade straight, Soup trying to guard me, and it's great to have him back. I'm a big fan of his. I was a big fan of his when he stopped Chris Carter on, it was a 3rd and 8 in Columbus. The week before Michigan had lost, it was the Ricky Foggy game. And Jim Harbaugh came out and guaranteed a victory against Michigan, against Ohio State in Columbus. And on a 3rd and 8, Eric Campbell came up, tackled Chris Carter, a future Hall of Famer, and stopped him short. And then Ohio State had to settle for a pretty makeable field goal. It was 26-24, and the Buckeyes missed the field goal. Michigan wins. Campbell makes the big stop. And Jim Harbaugh's guarantee comes through. If there's no Soup Campbell, the guarantee, who knows? No guarantee from Harbaugh, no captain comeback. Maybe he doesn't come back to Michigan. Soup Campbell is a hell of a guy. Welcome back, Soup. Hadley says, how much stock do you take in Tigers spring training games from what, if any, you have seen so far avoiding injuries? I think they can win the division. It's a good transition getting into Detroit sports. The Lions, for the last 2 years, obviously a huge up arrow. They made it to the NFC title game 2 years ago. They were the number 1 seed last year. It still hurts that they lost to the Commanders, but things are still in the uptick. Their championship window is still wide open for the Detroit Lions. So they're in a great spot. The Tigers, after making the playoffs last year, I don't put any stock into spring training. I don't really care who the 25th man on the roster is or who's getting the last spot in the rotation. After opening day, excuse me, after a game or two, they'll be sending guys down and sending guys back up. So I never have cared about that. I've seen a hell of a lot of guys go down there and have hit in spring and then come up and start an 0-20 slump. And I've seen it go the other way. So I put nothing into spring training. I always wanted to go to spring training. It looks fun to go down there and hang out at the ballpark, and it's baseball, so there's nothing wrong with that. But no, I take zero from spring training, and of course injuries. But I do think they can win the division anyways. So, and they've got a huge up arrow. The Pistons are one of the best stories in the NBA. With the way that they're playing, you could tell they got a team. They don't just have a starting five. They got a bench, bigger staffs, a coach. It's fun. And then, look, I was watching the Red Wings last night. 2-0 down against the Wild. They come back and win the game. Edvinsson, the Swede line, he blasts one from just inside the blue line. Exciting. Really exciting. The Red Wings, to get some big games coming up against the Blue Jackets, Hadley, in your neck of the woods. So it used to be where the Tigers were, starting out, both the Pistons and Red Wings would be in the playoffs, April and the D. People would just be Michigan spring game. It would be one of the great months for sports fans, but it haven't been like that for 10 years. That's 10 years we're talking about. But stock is up in all Detroit sports. Stock is up for Michigan basketball and Michigan football. It's a great time to be alive. Tell you what, Michigan sports, it's a buy right now. If I was running a radio station in Detroit, I would say, let's start talking sports. Let's talk more about the Tigers and the Red Wings and the Pistons and the Lions. Let's do it. Somebody has probably thought of that. We'll see. All right. I'll take the last couple on the feedback here. It's been great to be with you here today. Ferris says, you can only have one. Before I even read it, I'm going to take Michigan to have success in the tournament, but let's see what you say. Would I rather tie with MSU for the Big Ten regular season? Win the Big Ten tournament, get to the Elite Eight. I'll take door 3 on that one. I would rather go to the Elite Eight. I would rather win the Big Ten tournament than tie for the Big Ten regular season. I mean, this is a championship, even though you get a ring, but, it's like, we tied with Michigan State. I hate ties. Let's get me a shirt. Let's get a shirt. I hate ties. Wear a tie. So no ties with Michigan State. Yes, I'd like to win the Big Ten tournament. Now, I would rather win an outright regular season tournament than winning the Big Ten tournament, but I'd rather win the Big Ten tournament than tie. And I'd rather Michigan not get a tie or win the Big Ten tournament and then get to the Elite Eight. I would take that door 3. So that's it. Yeah, it was a nice win, getting that third period goal. It felt like a playoff game. It felt like when you're watching it, especially getting Edvinsson in there. And they've been led by their their top guns like a lot of teams. But now you're getting here comes the defense. You're getting contributions from guys that aren't your normal 4 or 5 guys that you're thinking about. They're going to need these guys. This is the kind of goaltending that you're talking about as well. And let's go. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting from here on out for the Pistons and the Wings. And then when the Tigers' actual season starts, and then of course, the combine is going on, and we're always excited about football. So it's a great time. It's a great time to be alive. I feel like we've made the turn, and Detroit sports isn't just this complete it was so bad for so long that it's turned, and now all four teams. I don't think all four teams could win a championship, but I think that all four teams, the Lions are going to make the playoffs. The Pistons and Red Wings should make the playoffs. The Tigers win in the division. And in baseball, if you can get into the tournament, you think about Dodgers and Yankees, you're going to be able to beat them, Guardians. But yeah, it's good on all that. Thanks so much for joining us. We will talk with you after the Michigan basketball game tomorrow night, as we're on after every Michigan hoops game. And then we'll be back here on Friday at 2:00. Until then, we'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review on the Den. Everybody have themselves a great day, and so long.